Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to start with Donald Trump, Bill O'Reilly. What could possibly go wrong here? Is this the sexual harassment Lollapalooza? Perhaps. Evidently, Trump and O'Reilly have decided they're going to team up. Yes. Two old white guys on a speaking tour. And they announced it on the same day that Rudy Giuliani is, we get audio that Giuliani's been strong-arming the Ukrainians back before the Zelensky call. We're now finding out all of the under stuff that went on there under the underhanding dealings. Also, Stormy Daniels is back with her attorney claiming that they're in contact with the prosecutors investigating the Trump organization. Good news there. Also, breaking news as we speak. Documents have been uncovered by the Senate Judiciary Committee that, Mark Meadows, all of the things that you were doing to try and pressure the DOJ and Billy Barr and those folks to do the illegal stuff of overturning the election. That's going to come and probably bite you in the behind. That's coming. So look, while I'm one who says this stuff's going too slowly, it's happening. There are people investigating things about the previous administration, all of the underhanded dealings, all of the backroom stuff, all of the mob-style arm twisting. We're finding out about. And look, everything around the election and all of the attempts to overturn it, that is being investigated. Now, here's my problem. My problem is Republicans are all on board with the steal of the next election and moving towards, making sure that in the future they can do what Trump wanted them to do. And this is the scary part in this, because I do believe, and we're going to get to Joe Manchin in a minute, but I do believe that everybody, or at least I used to believe, everybody wanted the same kind of things. A fair election cycle, open to everybody. Right down that line. I used to believe that until you start looking around at what the Republicans have been doing. Again, words are cheap. It's what actions. What actions are they pursuing? And they're pursuing to ensure that in the future, if they so choose, they can go back and do what Trump wanted them to do, which to throw out the results. They're all fraudulent because I didn't win. Now, in 2016, when he did win, same kind of scenario. He was claiming all along they're going to steal it from me. There's cheating. And what? I won? Oh, that was the fairest, cleanest election ever. You can't have that both ways. Now, this brings me to Joe Manchin. Over the weekend, Joe Manchin came out with an op-ed titled, "Why I'm Voting Against the For the People Act." Now, I don't believe he was ever going to actually vote for it. He did sponsor it at one point. But now he's chosen this idea that we can't do any voting reform. We can't do anything on the voting front unless it's bipartisan. Now, look, there had been a part of me for a while that said, you know what, we should be doing these things in a bipartisan fashion. We should all agree that we want open, fair elections, that every eligible person has access to the ballot box, that we want to make it easier. People want to do mail-in ballots, great. There's a way to verify that. Oregon has been doing it for years. In fact, they don't even do the in-place voting from what I understand. Everything's by mail, and they don't seem to have any problems. We could, if we wanted to, if we really wanted to, we could move forward in a way that would ensure everyone's right to vote. Now, you go back and you go, well, whose interest is it to stop people from voting? And it's always been, and I hate putting it this way, but it's always been the Republicans who have tried to figure out, how do we keep people from voting? It goes back to Paul Weyrich, who back, years ago said, I don't want everyone to vote. In fact, our leverage goes down as the voting populace goes up. Basically saying the more people vote, the less leverage we have. Basically reiterating what my high school government teacher said. You kids don't bother, don't register, stay home. Gives my vote more power, more strength. And they've been doing what they can do, for decades now to ensure that certain groups of people don't vote. You go back to 2000, they threw a bunch of people with names of minorities off the voting rolls. In fact, my favorite, and Greg Palast, the investigative reporter, he uncovered this stuff when Choice Point went through a bunch of people off the voting rolls. One guy they threw off the voting rolls because he was a felon, or not yet a felon. He would be a felon in a couple of years. They actually wrote that his felony date was a couple of years into the future, which is why they threw him off the voting rolls. Now, what we now know, those people weren't felons. In fact, their names just sounded like somebody. Like, how many Rick Smiths are there in this country? So if there's one out there, all of us are thrown off the voting rolls. But here's the thing. Rick Smith is kind of a, one of those names where you're not really sure, so we're not going to go after that one. But a lot of the ethnic sounding names, a lot of the predominantly African American names, well, those are easy to go after. And it's what they did. They threw 90,000 people off the voting rolls, overwhelmingly African Americans, in a state that, if you believe the results and the hanging chads and all that stuff, was decided by 500 votes. You threw 90,000 people who were probably going to vote for Democrats if they voted off the voting rolls, and it was decided by 500 votes. So Republicans understand this, and Joe Manchin understands this. He goes into this screed about, partisan policy making won't instill confidence in our democracy. Here's the thing. We don't have confidence now. I don't have confidence in what the Republicans are doing in states across this country. They are setting up how they are going to steal the next election. We know this. In fact, we see it in, what is it? There are 22 bills in 14 states that have already passed that threaten the core values of a free and fair election. And yet you're saying, well, we can't do anything on the federal level because it's not bipartisanship. Do you think those states, come with me here, because this is important, Joe. Do you think those 14 states did it in a bipartisan fashion? Of course they did not. And this is where, look, I applaud the idea. You're so 1960s here. This isn't our grandparents' political scenery. It's not. He goes into talking about, there were those Republicans who stepped forward and voted for impeachment that everyone applauded. Yeah, those were people who were like, we can't have criminals overrunning our Capitol. Those were the 7 that had a spine and that said the steal of the election right in front of us is wrong. Any of them come forth with an idea of how to make voting more accessible, more secure, anything? The answer is no. And look, I give Burr from North Carolina and Cassidy from Louisiana and Collins from Maine and Murkowski from Alaska and Romney from Utah and Sass from Nebraska. And, of course, my Senator Pat Toomey, whom I don't particularly care for. I give them credit for in that moment saying what Donald Trump did was an impeachable offense. The problem was, here it is. The problem was, the other Republicans weren't on board. And they're never going to be on board. My problem with this whole scenario, and Joe Manchin goes through this whole spiel about, how if we do this in a partisan way, it's just going to deepen the partisan divides. In states across this country, they are working on stealing the next election. Inaction at the federal level will allow that to happen. That's the end result. That is the end of the game. All of the flowery words and all that you care about the filibuster and you care that somehow you think that it's going to breed bipartisanship. It doesn't. We know this. We are basically living, the last couple of decades over and over again, where Republicans do this neat trick, and they do it masterfully. They're really good at this, where they say, we want to negotiate. We want to be bipartisan. And they amend the heck out of things. They send out amendments and they got ideas. There are no ideas here on the voting front, mind you. They haven't come forth with a, hey, well, this isn't what I dislike in the For the People Act. Let's swap it out for this. This is something we might be able to agree on. There's none of that going on, or at least none that we know of. Maybe Joe Manchin is privy to information, and I'm assuring he is, that none of the rest of the Democratic Party is privy to. Maybe in the cloakroom, maybe in the bars or wherever he hangs out with the Republicans, maybe they're whispering in his ear that there's some magical kind of bipartisanship that is possible. I'm telling you, in this moment, it's not, because Republicans understand they've got the power in the states to rig the next election. They're going to hold on to the gerrymandered districts that they've got because it's gotten them the more majority. They are not going to give that up. And one of the things the For the People Act does is it attempts to break down the gerrymandering. I think we do need to have nonpartisan commissions, set up these districts in a way that if we're going to gerrymander them, they're gerrymandered for competition, not for a 90% swing one way or the other. I don't want heavily Democratic districts. I don't want heavily Republican districts. I want competitive districts. And if we're going to draw these bizarre cartoon characters and draw these weird shapes, and I mean, it's incredible to me how they've come up with these districts. If we're going to do that, and we're going to contort districts, to cover half a state, and in some, like the one in Ohio, that isn't even connected by land, then we should do that in a way that's committed to making high competition districts. 50-50 districts, so that people fight on ideas, not on who can gerrymander the best district. But we are not hearing any of that stuff. None of it. The reality is Manchin knows there's nothing. Here's the thing, though. The For the People Act has a lot of very bipartisan parts to it. Voters understand this. The political partisans, they understand the game. They understand why they need to stop any federal legislation that opens up voting to people, because Republicans get it. Their numbers are dwindling. Their people are aging. They have no policy initiatives. There's nothing that they've argued for or pushed for that's going to make people's lives better. So they've got to hold on with a death grip, with the white knuckle ride death grip onto the power that they have. And that is ensuring that a large number of people don't get to vote. Again, when the voting populace goes up, their leverage goes down. And we understand that. My problem with Manchin is he keeps this mindset that we can have this kumbaya. And I hope he understands that inaction isn't really an option. Something has to be done. Now, he's talked about the John Lewis Act. The John Lewis Act is a great thing. We need to move on that. But you also need to move on a major components of the For the People Act. And this is what debate is about. This is my problem with all of this stuff. Manchin says we don't have bipartisanship. Well, why not? Get on the floor of the Senate, because this is what debate is supposed to be. We debate what we like, what we don't like. We hear what we're for, what people are against. And then, here's the important part, then you vote on it. The problem we've had for so long is the Senate is the place where good ideas go to die. The Senate is the place where progress dies. And the status quo can remain. I think Reverend Warnock had probably the best line out of any of the discussions in all of the talk about the For the People Act and for the filibuster being done away with. He said that it's a contradiction to say we must protect minority rights in the Senate while refusing to protect minority rights in society. I find that really a telling line, because understand what our Supreme Court did when they decided the Shelby case. When they decided that, they opened up the wild, wild west into the South of doing all of the shenanigans that they've been getting away with. This idea, well, it's been a long time since 1965 and the Voting Rights Act. We're better than that now. No, we're not. We're not better than that at all. And the reality is you've got Manchin, who has created this false narrative of, well, we can choose the John Lewis Act, but not the For the People Act. They do different things. They do very different things, and they're critical. It's a false choice. The John Lewis Act would stop future, racist anti-voter laws from proliferating. But the For the People Act would stop the rigging that's going on in our state houses across this country, and would begin to take, dark money out of politics. I had someone tell me, dark money is not the real problem. It's those small donors. No, those small donors, that's real speech. Those are real people in numbers. We the people, not a billionaire or a foundation or whatever dark money group is throwing huge tons. That's not that. We should be making transparent every dime that is spent politically. This way we know, and I've often said, we need to get patches on our senators' suits to find out which special interest they're bought and paid for. This is one of those moments where we, without question, need true reform. Now, I'm somebody who's not fond of federal legislation being the overarching legislation when states can do things right. Problem is, the states haven't been doing it. Do I want to create another federal bureaucracy? No. But there has got to be a cop on the beat from all of the shenanigans we've seen out of Republicans across this country. This idea that they're going to look at what they're doing in Arizona. And you have legislators from Pennsylvania going to Arizona to go, hey, teach me how I can bring this disgraceful nonsense back to Pennsylvania, and we can do the same thing. And one of those guys, Doug Mastriano, is talking about running for governor? Does that not concern people that the guy who's helping figure out how we can steal the next election is running for a higher office? That at some point, they may go, well, you know what? We don't like the outcome. To me, that is scary, and it's wrong. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. The second we lose the sanctity of the ballot box is the second we lose this wonderful experiment of self-governance. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Richard Jett is going to be here to share some thoughts on Joe Manchin and where we need to go. Right back after this.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.